Hello, Monish, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Indrani Talukdar. Hi, Olga.
Hello, good afternoon. Hi.
We finally see each other.
Yes, that's a very good day that we can meet at least online, right? Face to face online.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Rajeev sir, can you put yourself on mute for some time? Yeah. All right. I think we are sharp at 3 p.m. here, and we have all the speakers, and I hope I'm very audible to all of you. A very good afternoon to everyone from New Delhi, and I think it's a bit late morning in Europe, and welcome to all participants and friends who must have joined from different parts of India and from different parts of the world. Welcome you all to this webinar series that is regularly hosted by the Chintan Research Foundation, which is one of the newest think tanks in New Delhi. And we are an independent think tank committed to shaping policy through rigorous research and thought leadership. And it's a pleasure for all of us here at Chintan Research Foundation to have friends and speakers from Europe, and also from India, and from the EU delegation in India. I think we have a very fantastic line of speakers. First of all, I apologize that our president, Mr. Shishi Priyadashi, could not join this meeting because he has some other meetings where he is held up. But we are very pleased to be represented by Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, a senior researcher at the Chintan Research Foundation, who has very long years of experience in the Indian Army and also in the think tank and policy making circles. So with that, I think what I could start with to set the tone and tenor of the discussion today is that it will be an understatement to say that we live in challenging times. The economic order, political order, and the security order that we have gotten used to for so many years, both in Europe and the rest of the world, is going through many changes. But there could be a silver lining in the risks and dangers, a silver lining of opportunities that we could not explore before, but the challenging times that we are passing through might open up this silver lining, and we might explore more opportunities for India and the European Union. And it is to explore such opportunities amidst adversities that we have gathered here today for this discussion, online discussion on European Union and India, emerging perceptions and future horizons. The intention is also to listen and learn more from our European partners, how they perceive India, whether there have been substantial changes in the way they perceive India, or there are more continuities. We intend to learn more of that. Of course, we have our Indian perspectives also. So the lineup of speakers is very interesting. The opening remarks will be given by, as I alluded to before, Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, who is a senior research consultant at the Chintan Research Foundation. I am your host today, Monish Tourangbam. I am a research consultant at the Chintan Research Foundation, and we are very pleased and honored to have amidst us Dr. Suwara, who is the deputy head of the delegation of the European Union to India. Thank you, ma'am, for taking out time and joining us today. We really look forward to listening to you. I'm pleased to have my good friend, Dr. Aleksandra Jaskólska, who is a lecturer at the University of Warsaw, Poland. This must be the nth number of times that Aleksandra and I work together. So it's always a pleasure. And it's my pleasure to have Dr. Laszlo Csicsmann for the first time, who is a professor at the Corvinus University in Hungary. Welcome to CRF, Dr. Laszlo, and we sure that we can have you in person in New Delhi also very soon. And last but not the least, it's my pleasure to have my colleague, Dr. Indrani Talukdar, who is a fellow at CRF. So without any further ado, I will not sit between you and the speakers. A couple of housekeeping rules before we start the proceedings. I expect the speakers to speak for about 10 to 12 minutes so that we can have some time at the end for a round of question and answer and interventions. And if you are not speaking to all the participants, please keep yourself on mute. And anyone who has questions and interventions, you have the chat box in front of you. You can use that. And I'll be sure to come back to you after the initial presentations are done. So now it's my pleasure to first welcome and request Colonel Rajeev Agarwal to kindly give the opening remarks for the webinar. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Monish. And welcome to all of you on behalf of President CRF, Shishi Priyadarshi. As Monish mentioned, due to pressing engagements, he could not be here, although he was scheduled to be with us to give his opening remarks. It's an absolute honor to hold such a prominent dignitaries and scholars for this webinar. At CRF, in the brief journey of over a year, we have endeavored to undertake work and initiatives which can make a difference, not only the growth trajectory of India, but also strengthening the partnerships with our key partners, and European Union and European countries are one of them. We have done a little bit of work on engagement with Europe. We had a day-long event on IMAC, which is a key connectivity project linking India and Europe. We hosted the special envoy for IMAC from Italy, Ambassador Francisco Talo, just a few weeks back in this context. And as Dr. Suwara may remember, we also hosted EU delegation with Beatrice Ustub, the Director Asia Pacific, on 30th June during his visit here. Recently, we also had a roundtable on defense partnership with Europe, where some of the ambassadors and DCMs had come and shared their views, and it was a huge success. Today, in this series of engagement with Europe, we are looking to discuss a few more important and future-looking prospects in this critical partnership. And as we scan the canvas of the globe today, it will be an understatement to say that the world order is going through one of its most consequential phases of transition across geographies and across issues and areas. Trump and tariff have become the major topic of discussion in diplomatic as well as economic circles. While India has been singularly targeted, Europe too has been impacted by the strong and strained terms of the deal which it has struck with US. In this context, two large economic powers, India and the European Union, are both navigating a tumultuous time in global trade dynamics and new terms of engagements on security matters. This has in turn injected a vigor in both Brussels and in New Delhi to negotiate and finalize the comprehensive free trade agreement at the earliest. On defense and security, many European countries and India have had robust defense ties for many years, and the changing circumstances as well as increased defense spending and India's focus on self-reliance as also make in India for the world, especially in terms of defense, is opening new doors for opportunities for charting new horizons in not only sales and purchase, but also co-development and co-production of modern and futuristic weapon platforms. Within the EU and India, there is a recognition and acknowledgement of each other's foreign policy and economic choices, as well as the position on range of issues on questions of war and peace. So in a final analysis, the challenging global environment could be seen as an opportunity both for New Delhi as well as Brussels and other European capitals to turn a new leaf in the relationship and find a new purpose to forge ahead a positive arc, diagnose the minor irritants in a pragmatic fashion, and chart new steps. And there is therefore so much that India and Europe share and so much that we need to discuss. And I therefore look forward to a very, very enriching discussion from such prominent experts, both in scholars as well as diplomatic field during this webinar. Thank you, and over to Dr. Monish.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for, in a nutshell, really setting the tone and tenor of the discussion that we are going to have. And let me also add that the three verticals at CRF, which is the climate change and energy transition, and Center for Trade and Economy, and the Center for Geopolitics and Strategic Studies, I think aptly and comprehensively covers many of the opportunities that India and the European Union hopes to explore in the times to come. Now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Suwara, Deputy Head, Delegation of the European Union of India, kindly make her initial remarks and presentations. The virtual floor is yours, Dr. Suwara.
Thank you very much, Monish. Thank you very much, Rajeev Agarwal, for the welcoming words. And thank you to all the participants for joining for this webinar. It's a fantastic opportunity to actually interact with you. I know that among our participants, there's quite a lot of scholars, so I am more than thrilled to be here, not just scholars, but also some journalists, some private sector. So everybody that is here, just a big thank you that you are interested in the European Union and you want to know more. And we met today to discuss about this emerging perception and future horizons. I just recently started to read the book by Shyam Saran, How India Sees the World. So it's when I've been asked by you to interact and say a little bit how EU sees the India, I think that gave me a little bit of food for thought to share with you. Without further delay, let me jump straight into my short address that I would like to wish and focus, as you, Monish, not just yourself, but also Rajeev Agarwal have mentioned about the opportunities amidst the challenges. So first of all, let me say a big thank you to CRF for inviting me to today's webinar. It's held, I believe, in an important year for EU-India partnership. And let me bring two quotes that clearly define emerging perception and future horizons for EU and India in 2025. First quote, in an era of conflicts and intense competition, you need trusted friends. For Europe, India is such a friend and a strategic ally. Second quote, we want to strengthen economic ties with India, unlocking opportunities for people and businesses on both sides. Both quotes come from President Ursula von der Leyen, who said them in February this year. They highlight the EU's view of India as a pivotal partner in a rapidly changing global landscape. Moreover, these words reflect the EU's commitment to a long-standing strategic partnership with India, the partnership that is mutually beneficial, strategic, and multifaceted. I say a few additional words about perception, but before I do that, let me make a short remark on the historic background of the EU-India relation as a preliminary introductory words. So formal engagement of European Union and India began in the 1960s when India was among the first to establish diplomatic relations with the then European Economic Community. In 2004, EU and India upgraded relations to a strategic partnership, expanding cooperation in trade, technology, climate, education, and security. In February 2025, President von der Leyen led the first ever visit by the EU College of Commissioners to India, underscoring the high priority both sides attach to this relationship. So let's focus for a moment on facts about this relationship. Population, EU population comes to 447 million, and India's population 1.4, just above 1.4 billion. EU is India's largest trading partner, with goods trade valued at 124 billion euro, services trade valued at 59.7 billion euro in 2023. Over 6,000 European companies create 1.7 million jobs in India. To support India in developing its market and to explore opportunities that India offers to the EU companies, while explaining the EU to India, Federation of European Businesses India was established just last year. It strengthens EU-India business ties through advocating for European companies, facilitating dialogue with Indian authorities, promoting regulatory alignment. Now, education. India is the largest non-European Erasmus Plus beneficiary. 101 students in 2025 are set to go to study in Europe. Technology. We undertake joint work on artificial intelligence, digital infrastructure, and innovation. Languages. The EU has 24 official languages, making Brussels meeting a remarkable display of simultaneous translation, interpretation, while India has 22 official recognized languages and over 1,600 dialects. While being a fun fact, it is also a reminder of how both regions embrace linguistic diversity. In this relation, there are similarities and few divergences. I mentioned size of population of both partners and trade balance. That's important. The current Indian government has a vision that by 2047, India becomes a developed country. The EU, as EU institution and as Team Europe, supports India in the development efforts. For 2021 to 2027, we foresee 90 million euro in grants, plus 110 million euro for health and 70 million for other initiatives. Team Europe ensures sustainable projects, job creation, and infrastructure support, reflecting the EU's understanding of India as a developing country. So let me now say a few words about the perception. In ECFR Global Perception Survey of January 2025, when asked about the views on the EU, the results in India were the following. We had 5% saying that EU is perceived as ally, 38% as a necessary partner, 40% did not know, 15% as competitor, and 3% as an adversary. I would like to draw on two conclusions from those statistics. First, close to half of respondents perceive EU positively. Second, there is 40% of Indian respondents that do not know the EU. This information is both a challenge and an opportunity. For the EU and the Europeans, there is need for the outreach and explain about the EU. The best way to do it is through pointing on similarities and share challenges. So what does India and EU have in common? We are enriched by diverse societies, I mean cultural, linguistic, and regional diversity. We are economic hubs with strong industrial and service sectors. We focus on sustainability, hence climate action and green technology. We both have innovation ambitions, continuing our investment in research and digital transformation. India and the EU share global challenges such as climate change, energy security, digital transformation, health crises, and finally, geopolitical tensions. Working together allows both of us to pool expertise and resources for effective solutions. Both India and EU consider their own security as imperative and a driving force for decision-making processes. I'm sure that during today's webinar, we will come back to that. In February 2025, President von der Leyen emphasized the need for a deeper cooperation in defense and security, stating, for Europe, India is a pillar of certainty in an increasing uncertain world. We are exploring how to turn those words into effective cooperation. While Indian public may still have limited opinion about European Union, I believe economic stakeholders, security and political establishment have gradually become aware of interest of the Indian to diversify and engage with the European Union. While engaging, we acknowledge challenges ahead of us. To point few: trade and market access, digital trade and data security, climate, energy, human rights, geopolitical divergence. While we deal with those challenges, we look to opportunities, and there are many of them. Let me indicate some. In trade and economic cooperation, let's keep in mind that there are over 6,000 European companies in India, and EU is India's largest trading partner, EU as a bloc. There are investment opportunities in technology, green energy, and manufacturing. There is a potential, something that has been just mentioned a moment ago. There is a potential of a future free trade agreement for both sides. During the February visit, both leaders have committed to concluding the FTA negotiations by the end of 2025, aiming to enhance collaboration in trade, technology, investment, innovation, green growth, security, skilling, and mobility. Quite a long list. FTA negotiations are ongoing, and let's see what change this process brings about. Second area of opportunity lies in technology and innovation. Let's imagine combining India's digitalization initiatives and EU expertise in artificial intelligence and data protection. Trade and Technology Council constitutes a platform where India and EU continue to discuss and focus on areas such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and cybersecurity. In climate, well, there's a potential in collaboration on renewable energy, climate change, and sustainable development. In education and people-to-people contacts, there are student exchange programs such as Erasmus+, joint research projects such as Horizon Europe. All this offer knowledge transfer in science, technology, and innovation. What about security and geopolitics? We share, and I already have mentioned, interest in regional stability and maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. Cooperation in counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and peacekeeping is another opportunity. Global governance, we can coordinate positions on multilateral forums such as UN, WTO, G20. We share commitment to rule-based international order. Frankly speaking, I could continue for much longer indicating all areas where there is a potential for strengthening our partnership. I mentioned that this year is a key for EU-India relations. We had College of Commissioners visited back in February that triggered reflection where we both, EU and India, want to go forward with our relations. While we engage in this momentum, we look forward to signing FTA and hopefully holding EU-India summit at the early 2026 that will not just be a political gesture, but an event filled with meaningful actions that the strategic partners can take forward. So how does EU see India? And that leads me nearly to concluding remarks. Well, there is an opportunity to positively impact global affairs, no doubt. For EU, India is a strategic partner respected for innovation, leadership in climate action, and strategic autonomy. In fact, the European Union sees India not just as a partner, but as a strategic ally in shaping a more sustainable, secure, and prosperous world. Therefore, in our views, next step for cooperation should include concluding FTA by end of 2025, developing a strategic agenda for 2030 with a roadmap that will go beyond end of 2025, and strengthening people-to-people ties and engage in multilateral forum. Let me conclude with the following words. In my short address, I indicated some challenges that both partners are facing. The strategic partnership turns challenges into opportunities. This is how they should be seen and understood. As President von der Leyen said, our partnership is a cornerstone of our vision for a sustainable and rule-based global order. EU cooperation ensures benefits for citizens, students, businesses, and policymakers, shaping a stable and innovative global future. Thank you. This is all from my side. To start.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suwara. I think nothing could have described, I think, the relationship, which has so much of opportunities. There are some challenges, but the potential has to be realized. And I think one thing that jumped out from your presentation was really this percentage that says, we don't know about the European Union. I think, as you rightly said, there's an opportunity there. Numbers don't tell all the story, right? We have to work on the numbers. And I think here lies a lot of role for the EU External Service Division, the EU Public Diplomacy, to do a lot more groundwork in terms of really translating more knowledge about what the EU really does in India and across the world. So with this, I think, let me now invite Dr. Aleksandra Jaskólska to share her initial insights and presentation.
Thank you so much. I would like to also thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be among such a distinguished scholars, journalists, and also, as Ms. Suwara mentioned, people from the business. So I'm very happy that we managed to attract such a broad audience. Thank you so much for opening remarks, Mr. Rajeev Agarwal. Monish, always a pleasure to be at the event you organized. And now I would like to build a bit on this, what Ms. Eva Suwara said, and especially about two issues which basically came up at the end of her speech. So you mentioned about Indo-Pacific and you mentioned about the rule-based order. So I would like to touch on this, obviously through the perspective on this, how the EU sees India. I believe it's already quite obvious that EU realized that Indo-Pacific, Asia-Pacific, whatever we want to call it, is a very important part of the world. We can see clearly that for the last at least 1.5 decades, there is more interest in the EU. Just to give you some I would say evidence maybe. So ASEAN became a strategic partnership of the EU in 2020. We have obviously also important document, which is the strategy towards the Indo-Pacific in 2021. We have first EU-India summit, EU-ASEAN summit in 2022. But also EU, do not forget about some smaller partners. What I mean here is this Samoa Agreement Pacific countries in 2023. But as I mentioned, I would like to focus a bit more on the Indo-Pacific and the rule-based order. In the contrary to Ms. Suwara, I'm a scholar. I'm not able to practice this what I do research on. So I will show a bit different perspective, I believe. So talking about the rule-based order, EU wants to present itself as a normative power. I'm sure you are well aware with this concept, but maybe just me very briefly put it in the nutshell. So one of my favorite scholars, Jan Manners, he basically defines normative power as a power which uses basically normative justifications rather than material incentives or physical force, right? So it means that the country or non-state actor, in this case, the EU, in contrast to military power, this normative power strength is in the legitimacy of the principles promoted, as well as coherency and consistency. As the EU basically sees itself as normative power, it's also related, obviously, with such a called European values. Yeah, what is understood by European values? Obviously, that will be the principles of democracy, the rule of law, also broadly defined human rights. Obviously, I think here about fundamental rights, civil liberties, social solidarity, and so on and so on. So, in my opinion, there is a bit of a challenge in this, how the EU sees the India. I'm talking through this perspective of EU being a normative power. I totally agree with everything what was said by Mr. Agarwal and Ms. Suwara, that EU and India are coming closer together. There are so many things we can cooperate together, not rather things, sorry, but areas. But I believe that the challenge is here that India has very, how to call it, challenging, not a good word, but India's approach to global politics, which is based on strategic autonomy, non-alignment, but also multi-alignment, right? And different programs that Narendra Modi is promoting, like Viksit Bharat, or the program mentioned with Ms. Suwara, so becoming independent in the security sector till 2023. To achieve it, India needs to be focusing really on promoting multipolar world order and cooperating with as many actors as possible. And for EU, I believe it is a challenge because EU as a normative power would like to see India very similar to EU in the sense that as India is democracy, India should cooperate with the countries which are democracies or promote at least liberal values. Obviously, I'm talking here about Russia and India's approach to Russia, but also India's approach to Iran. So I believe that it is a challenge. I'm not saying it is something which may stop the cooperation, but I rather believe, as we talk as a perspective, that still there is a maybe not even lack of understanding, but a bit lack of willingness to somehow accept India's approach to global politics. I believe that EU would like to see India a bit more like the EU, going hand in hand, criticizing Russia, criticizing Iran, promoting world liberal order only, with no possibility of supporting some illiberal or undemocratic regimes. The next step, talking about the Indo-Pacific, I believe it is important to discuss it a bit because obviously when EU looks at India, it is seen as a part of something bigger, right? And as I mentioned, in 2021, we have this joint communication on the Indo-Pacific from the European Commission and the European Council, basically the EU strategy for cooperation in Indo-Pacific. It was presented by High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, and he underlined very similarly like Ms. Ursula von der Leyen that the Indo-Pacific region is the future and must become the strategic priority for the EU. Talking about the Indo-Pacific, I think if each one of us present in this webinar would like to propose his or her own definition of the Indo-Pacific, it will take us a few hours. It is very unclear what exactly Indo-Pacific is, but I would like to focus on the document published by the EU. So, as I mentioned, published 2021 is a very short document. Probably most of you had a look at it. In this document, ASEAN is mentioned 30 times. That's the biggest number, I would say, for state or non-state actors. Then we have Japan, 23 times, India and China, 18 times each, Australia, 12. But what is important, India together with Japan are mentioned as a core partners in the Indo-Pacific. So we can clearly see that through this document, this cooperation of the EU with the Indo-Pacific, India plays an important role. And again, the perspective of the EU on India through the Indo-Pacific. So EU would like to see, that's how I understand it, India as a strategic partner, obviously, but again, I see it as a strategic partner which will gonna help to build on this India as a normative power. Of course, EU is not criticizing directly China or mentioning that the strategy is against China, but once we read the strategy, we clearly see that India is an important partner for the EU in counterbalancing China. And again, let me underline here one more time this concept of the normative power. So to sum up this part of the rule-based order and the Indo-Pacific, I strongly believe that there are definitely more sectors and areas in which India and EU may cooperate, both in maintaining rule-based order as also promoting the concept of Indo-Pacific. But we also need to understand that EU have a very clear strategies of its foreign policy and the goals the EU wants to achieve, again, related to being a normative power promoting these European values. And India, in some ways, have the same as aims or key points in its strategy, but on the other hand, there are some things which are really disliked, I would say, by the EU, and that's something the EU don't really want to do with. Yeah, and one more point before I stop a bit on the economic cooperation. Thank you so much, Ms. Suwara, for wonderful overview of the cooperation of the EU and India and what are the sectors, and also to giving the numbers, which are, I would say, improving. They're really good. What we see in India in last, I would say, maybe few years, that India is becoming a bit more eager to sign free trade agreements. I'm sure you all can recall July this year when India and UK signed the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. And now the big question is if EU and India will manage to sign the FTA till the end of this year. I believe that it's a bit unlikely, my personal opinion. But would it change something in the relations? Would it gonna be a setback? I do not think so. If the FTA will be signed this year, that will be great. But if it's gonna be signed next year, I would believe that will be not a very important setback or in plus in the EU-India relations. What we can clearly see, yes, that the tariffs are a big thing for India and not only, but what I would like to underline a bit more before I stop here is that I believe it really depends on the EU if the FTA will be signed. In my perspective as a scholar, based on the research I did, India is not that eager to agree for everything what EU wants now in this FDA. So if EU will be eager to somehow be, let's say, more maybe not understanding towards India, but if the EU will be more eager to somehow resign from some parts of the FTA which was already proposed a few years back, there is the chance to sign it. Because what we can clearly see in the last few years, India is more and more sure of the goals and priorities India wants to achieve in its foreign and domestic policy. Yeah? India can negotiate, obviously, can agree to modify some of the things it wants to achieve, but India is becoming a tough negotiator. Yeah? And the EU, I believe, more and more understand it. So the final words from me, I strongly believe that we have a lot of things we can achieve, but there need to be a lot of work to be done on both sides. And thanks to this, I'm sure we're going to manage to develop our relationship, which can become really, really strategic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aleksandra, for not only a good presentation, but for opening some closed boxes. Right. So I'm really, I think I'll come back to it later on after the presentations get over. That as we see EU sort of becoming normal from normative, right? So if you can look at EU in a different sense regarding particularly its relationship with the eagle in the room. I'm not saying elephant in the room, so the elephant is also, and you have a dragon in the room also, you have an elephant and you have eagle. So I think the eagle is the one which is most difficult to handle right now for a lot of countries, including the EU, which was not the case before. I think also, when you said EU wants India to be a bit more like EU, I doubt that's going to happen in the real sense, and that opens up a lot of, I think, point for research, right? How we are evolving. But I think it also opens up one more question, which I'll come back to later, in terms of how EU negotiates with India. EU as a negotiating party, not the bilateral negotiations, but how does EU negotiate as an institution itself? But that's for later when the question and answer starts. But so I would now like to invite Dr. Laszlo Csicsmann, Professor Corvinus University, Hungary. Laszlo, you have around 10 to 12 minutes for your initial presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Monish, for this very important and timely webinar. And first of all, let me express my gratitude to the Chintan Research Foundation organizing this webinar and having me invited. I'm a professor based at Budapest, at the same time as Senior Research Fellow at the Hungarian Institute for International Affairs, which is closely connected to the government. But here, I would express my view as an academic scholar on EU-India relations. And I'm going to continue where Aleksandra just stopped her speech and trying to focus more on the geopolitical convergence and divergence between the European Union and India. And especially I'm trying to focus on the opportunities, the potential of IMEC, of the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, which I think is a very important recent development or initiative since September 2023, which was mainly an American, US initiative under the Biden administration. But I believe now at the very moment it's more a European and Indian initiative. So it is important, I think, to highlight that besides EU is a normative power, it's a strategic player and thinking about real politics as well, and trying to repositioning itself in this challenging and uncertain times. Especially, I think one of the very important tasks and questions for the European Union in the upcoming months and years is how to define China, whether we know that in recent documents that China is a systemic rival, so it's a question whether this US-China relation and dynamics under the Trump administration would change European Union position toward China. It can have an impact on its relation with India, in my opinion. But however, having said this, I think it's very important to highlight that there is a kind of consensus among European elites, which is very rare to see, by the way, that India is positive. And I think everyone's speaking about that there is a necessity of strategic realignment based on the February visit of Ursula von der Leyen and the strategic partnership reached in 2004. And advance these relations with the FTA towards what was recently said by both previous speakers. IMEC definitely would be very important in this sense, especially physical connectivity and digital connectivity were on the table previously, especially we know that India's goal was to have this North-South, international North-South transport corridor to connect Europe through Russia, which is still a very important project from the Indian point of view. However, due to the Russian-Ukraine war started in 2022, it was important to find another alternative, which was the IMEC, which from the American perspective, the goal of IMEC is to counterbalance BRI. But however, from the point of view of the European Union, India and the connecting Middle Eastern region is to strengthen the economic cooperation. Here we have some geopolitical convergences, I would say, so some positive things. I can mention some examples. Well, first of all, the FTA talks, and to reach an FTA agreement quite soon. I think it's an important prerequisite of IMEC. So there is a willingness from both sides to strengthen the economic ties. And we can highlight the member states of the European Union as well. For instance, Greece, I think, is a very important partner country in advancing IMEC. It's very close to India, as well as we can mention the recent defense pact between Italy and India as well. And France and Germany and many other countries are important players in this IMEC project. So we see really some positive sign. We can mention as well the India-GCC relations quite positively, the I2U2 initiative, of course, based on India, Israel, United Arab Emirates, and United States partnership, which based on the Abraham Accords, as well as I can put an emphasis on relaunching the EU-GCC relations, especially it happened last year under the Hungarian presidency with the first ever summit between EU and GCC countries. But however, we know that we have some obstacles here as well, which we should mention. And first, definitely, is the Middle Eastern crisis, including the Gaza situation, as well as the recent 12 days war between Israel and Iran and the United States, and the challenge of the Iranian nuclear program, as it was said recently by Aleksandra. And I think that's not easy to overcome those issues, because political stability, unfortunately, is a precondition to invest, especially to include private investment in IMEC. So to find a solution to the Gazan crisis, I think it's a very important point, and especially EU is getting more and more critical with Israel at this point, and very recently even many European leaders called for revisioning the commercial ties between the European Union and Israel. Of course, the EU countries are very much divided over this issue, I would say. For instance, Hungary is very pro-Israeli foreign policy at the moment, while other countries getting more critical, especially recently we know that France just talking about the recognition of the Palestinian state. So definitely it's a dividing point at the moment. And I think there is an opportunity for India to have a kind of conflict management mediation in this issue, which can help somehow to offer a kind of international solution to this crisis. At some points, GCC countries must enter to this situation to stabilize Gaza, governance, reconstruction. And second, definitely the challenge of Iran is an important one. I should say that, of course, India's approach to Iran is different than the European Union's approach. But of course, any kind of nuclear problem can be a challenge to India as well. So especially just recalling the recent Pahalgam incident and aftermath, we remember very much that in May, in June, Iranian leaders tried to approach Pakistan on the nuclear issue, which can be, of course, a challenge. So I would say, I mean, we can find a certain, not solution to the crisis, but common understanding of the problems. But however, other obstacle to IMEC, I think, is the security of Eastern Mediterranean region at large, I would say. And especially here, the foreign policy of Turkey can be, I would say, a bit problematic from both sides. We know that Greece is getting very close both to Israel and India, so paving the way to advance IMEC. But however, we know that Turkey is very critical with India. India is very critical with Turkey as well. And of course, Turkey is not involved in IMEC, so it's trying to somehow derail the entire project. to propose alternative ones, like the development road project recently from the GCC countries to Turkey, and having close relation with Pakistan and other countries in the Caucasus region is an important geopolitical competition as well. And especially recently, Turkey is trying to push the rebels in the eastern part of Libya to ratify one of the agreement reached by the official Libyan government and Turkey over the demarcation of maritime borders in the eastern Mediterranean, which can create a problem between Greece, Israel, Cyprus, and Turkey. So I think this is an issue to be solved. I think that's very important to deal with those things, and definitely we should highlight the other thing, which I think Aleksandra mentioned several times, that the perception of security challenges are a bit different from the European perspective, and especially the European Union considers Russia as a security challenge at the moment. We know we should mention the very recent sanctions package, the 18th package of sanctions implemented by the European Union, which includes India as well, especially because of the refinement and purchase and reselling of Russia's crude oil, that it can have an impact on slowing down probably FTA negotiations and the political developments. So I would say, as an academic scholar, there is a contradiction sometimes between EU's normative power and its strategic repositioning to somehow increase competitiveness economically and politically. Here, of course, the normative principles can somehow slow down the issues. Especially, I think this is the case with EU-India's relation, which I think is very important from the European perspective. Just last final words regarding IMEC. Another issue definitely is the role of China. As I mentioned, it was my first, I think, message that EU should redefine itself. And we know that China is very active on the way of IMEC, and Middle Eastern countries, I mean GCC countries, perceives IMEC as complementary to the BRI, so they don't want to counterbalance Chinese influence. Yeah, India has a, I would say, dynamic relation with China, what we know, especially very recently it seems some more re-engagement with China, especially it's something to do with US-India relations as well, and US-EU relations are interesting from that point of view. But it should be defined what role of China will play in this. I mean, politically, of course, physically nothing, because China is not part of this initiative. But here we know that China has a very influential role, for instance, in Greece with the Piraeus port. Very recently, it seems Thessaloniki port is more important in IMEC. So there are many alternatives, but we have to have a kind of clear message about these issues and to redefine EU's position regarding BRI and China's role in the European Union. So I'm skeptical about implementing IMEC, which would be, I think, a very important common project, which can really progress if there is a solution to those security challenges in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, as well as the Caucasus is somehow interconnected to this. So thank you so much again, and looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Laszlo, for such a, I think, it's a very free and frank, portrayal of what you, in your personal opinion and your studies, think of the prospects of IMEC. And we'll come back to this thing about geopolitical forces and its impact on IMEC. And one of the things that really piqued my mind was how you spoke about GCC's perception of BRI and IMEC as sort of complementary and not really sort of contradictory to each other in some sense. We'll come back to that, after the final presentation by my colleague, Dr. Indrani Talukdar, who is a fellow at CRF. Indrani, the virtual floor is yours now.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, really thank you to Shishir Priyadasi, our President CRF, for giving us an opportunity to hold this webinar. Then I would like to really thank Dr. Monish for giving me this opportunity to speak from the Indian perspective on this very crucial timing on India-EU relationship. And of course, thank you to each one of the participants and good morning from the EU scholars. And also, really, I would like to thank all the participants from my colleagues at CRF and also the external. So today I will try to maybe present a very objective and maybe a diplomatically correct, presentation on India-EU relationship. And I am looking at from an inflection point. So India, as you know, has termed President Ursula von der Leyen's visit to India in February as unprecedented and landmark. Yeah. At the same time, our EM, Mr. Jaishankar, has highly praised the strategic partnership between us, while President der von Leyen said that the partnership with India is one of our most important relationships for the coming decade, and strengthening this partnership is a priority. So both sides have acknowledged each other's importance as a strategic partner in this churning global world order. A lot of opportunities have opened up between us in some years, specifically and especially after the agreement on the Trade and Technical Council, TTC, then the signing of the Migration and Mobility Agreement of Phase 2, then the India-EU Trilateral Cooperation, IMEC definitely. So many other opportunities have been opened up between India and EU. At the same time, there are many challenges as well that has been between the two partners, and with the Russia-Ukraine war since 2022, then Donald Trump's tariff wars and the imposition of secondary sanctions on India. So perceptions, including media also in India, that makes it a little bit difficult for us to navigate this relationship. However, everything said and done, it has been noticed that both sides, given the understanding of each other's potential and importance, have been navigating the traverses and the gorges the relationship faces. So what I attempt to do today is I will address 6 questions during the next 10 minutes of mine. So the first one, the first question which I want to address is, so just when the Trump tariffs started hitting major partners, including the EU and India, so the EU High Commissioner von der Leyen came with the biggest EU delegation ever to India. So what does this mean to New Delhi from the strategic, economic and security points of view? So for New Delhi, this visit, in February signaled 3 things. So strategically, India mostly has seen the EU from a purely economic bloc, but the perception within New Delhi has been changing drastically from sometime when we see EU as equally a strong political and strategic actor. So there has been a shift from the normative economic power to a strong political strategic actor. And amidst US unpredictability under Trump, the EU seeks a reliable partner in Asia, and India's strategic autonomy helps EU to engage more transparently and complements its own strategic autonomy and strategic interdependence. Economically, we have seen that with Washington's tariff wars hurting India and others, Brussels actually presented itself as an alternative trade and investment partner. India reads the visit as in Europe's willingness to diversify its supply chains and reduce its overdependence on China. So despite the problems which we both partners face regarding FTA and all these things, the negotiations are still going on, India does give a stable free market. And security-wise, if we see that the visit of von der Leyen actually highlighted EU's intent to cooperate on cyber, maritime, and climate security issues. For Delhi, it has been a reassurance that Europe was aligning with India's Indo-Pacific vision and was open to joint security initiatives beyond economics. So my second question is, amidst the drastic shifts in the European security order since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war of 2022, how have Delhi and Brussels navigated divergences and convergences? So when I come to the convergences, both sides converged on the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and rule-based order. So India has supported humanitarian assistance and has been repeatedly calling for peace based on dialogue and diplomacy, while EU has welcomed India's balancing role in the global south. However, the divergences is the major one has been the India's continued energy imports from Russia. But we both sides have navigated this whole divergences as well. And we have managed to keep aside these divergences by broadening our cooperation in technology, then trade, connectivity, green transition, and security in the Indo-Pacific, ensuring that this Ukraine issue did not stall the larger partnership. So, in fact, there is a better understanding between both sides, despite the Ukrainian challenge. And, recently there was this event organized by CRF on India-EU defense partnership. And there the EU ambassador and also the German ambassador has spoken about that there has been a quite good understanding between India and EU regarding the India's role or position in this Ukraine-Russia war. My third question is, does New Delhi still find it difficult to deal with the EU as an institution as opposed to dealing with individual countries as major partners, particularly in matters of security and defense that are not economic in nature? So yes, to an extent. So when we come to on the defense and security, so though they are working on it, the EU is really working on it, but it still seems that it lacks a unified defense posture. So NATO still dominates the security, and definitely while key EU members like France and Germany carries more weight, and India therefore finds bilateral ties more effective. But we are working on it to, deal with EU as an entity. And in the institutional challenges, we face that the EU's consensus-driven decision-making slows the progress sometimes, and India prefers dealing with states with clearer authority and in a more bilateral, format. So there is also a shift underway, yet the EU's growing ambitions in defense and Indo-Pacific strategy are making Delhi treat Brussels more seriously. In fact, the India-EU Defense Cooperation Agreement is a testimony of New Delhi's seriousness towards EU as a defense partner. My fourth question is, amidst Donald Trump's push for defense spending, the EU is turning a curve from its usual perception of being merely a normative power and economic power to taking up a more self-reliant posture on defense matters. So how does this impact the view in Delhi? What are the risks and opportunities? So opportunities for India are like India can diversify defense partnerships beyond the US and Russia. So there can be co-production and joint R&D with Europe in defense technology, which aligns with India's Atmanirbhar Bharat. And with India's Sudarshan Chakra, which was announced on 15th August, it's a huge opportunity for both sides to cooperate. Then EU's Indo-Pacific engagement supports India's strategic weight in keeping Indo-Pacific as an open and free and not against any particular country. But the risks which we see is if EU's defense posture is framed through NATO, India's autonomy could be constrained first. Secondly, a stronger EU may also impose stricter conditionalities like human rights, digital governance in defense trade, etc. So the overall view from our perspective is India definitely welcomes a stronger, more capable Europe, provided it remains an independent pole rather than a transatlantic extension. My fifth question is, what are the stumbling blocks to an FTA between India and EU? In New Delhi, what are the major concerns and what is being in India as the way ahead and the ways to address India's concerns? So the major stumbling blocks are tariff on automobiles, wines and spirits. The EU demands cuts. Data flows, e-commerce rules and digital sovereignty are another stumbling blocks. Then the intellectual property rights and pharmaceuticals is another sector. Then labor and environmental standards, which EU keeps bringing up. So, and of course, the secondary sanctions by EU on India becomes a major stumbling block. And the India's concerns are like the market access for its service sectors, mobility for skilled workers, despite the migration and mobility agreement, and protection of its agriculture and SMEs. But the way ahead for this is India seeks gradual tariff reduction with safeguards. There are the sectoral FTAs, that is digital clean tech as building blocks. So there can be stronger dialogue on standards to avoid protectionism in the name of sustainability. And more Indian private actors should be encouraged, including under the IMEC project. And my sixth and the last question is on India and the EU, who have been both the votaries of an effective multilateralism in a multipolar world. So how do we perceive this India-EU partnership in this aspect in an era of polycrisis? So the shared vision is both values multilateralism and rule-based global order, both pushes for UN reforms, climate commitments, WTO revival, and resilient supply chains. In the polycrisis context, with overlapping crises, the Ukraine war, the Gaza war, the climate stress, economic fragmentations, many challenges, the India-EU partnership provides stability by providing strategic autonomy and avoiding great power dependency. And the future outlook, which can be seen, is India definitely brings legitimacy as global South's voice, while EU brings institutional weight and economic power. Together, they can build coalitions on digital governance, climate finance, maritime security, and reforming Bretton Woods institutions, and also do joint projects in the third countries under India South-South cooperation and not from EU's carrot and stick policy, because the South-South cooperation will actually make the projects in the developing countries more successful because of the Indian experiences. With these words, I hand over to Monish, and Monish, thank you so much.
Thank you, Indrani. Covered a lot of ground in 10 to 12 minutes. But it's interesting that Indrani's presentation and the kind of points that she has brought out are actually questions to our European speakers in some ways. But we'll try to pick on that. I think we have some questions which were submitted to us by email. So I'll try to sort of summarize them in some sense. There's already a question on chat box as well. If I had to sort of like look at what we are discussing today, and I think Laszlo rightly pointed out the timing and the relevance of the discussion that we are having, which is that I think a lot of countries are in some ways, in their own ways, looking for certainty and predictability in whatever ways we try to find them, right? Because there's so much of uncertainty and volatility coming from the decisions of one man, right? So I think in our own ways, we are all trying to grapple with this idea of what is that partnership, what is that strategic alliance that can somehow weather this storm and give us a sense of predictability and uncertainty. And I think India-EU relationship is sort of important in that sense. Having said that, I think I'll raise some of the questions that were put to me in the emails, and then there's already a question from one of our colleagues at CRF, and probably that question could be best directed to Dr. Suwara. which is the question on the CBAM, which is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and how India's steel industry for some time has been asking for some reprieve from CBAM, which sort of kicks in next year. Other sectors like cement and fertilizers are there. So the question is really that as we negotiate FTA, and we sort of hope that we can have an FTA by the end of this year, do you think this concerns would be addressed? I'll pick in 2-3 questions together and probably open it up to the speakers. So a related question that any one of you can answer, Aleksandra can pick up this question, is if not FTA, what could be the next best alternative this year? Do you see anything as an alternative to an FTA? What is the next best thing, right? Can we have a stopgap FTA? What do you expect, right? The other thing I think is really this question of geopolitics, and I think Laszlo spoke a lot on geopolitics. And I think the question is, we stand at an interesting cusp in history where we've always sort of, at least from here, we've always sort of seen this high integration in the defense industries of the European countries and the United States. And then you sort of have a disruption right now. I'm not really saying that integration is sort of disturbed, but there is a fissure in the transatlantic alliance. And you sort of see this as an opportunity from here in terms of a growing defense cooperation between India and European countries. Of course, there is this sense of bilateral and multilateral here, in the sense that we have always been defense partners with a lot of countries. On the other hand, Europe's sort of anathema with Russia, but Russia as a major defense partner for India. So sitting in Europe, how do you see this complex dynamics playing out, where India still holds on to Russia as a defense partner, but wants to open up to European partnership, still wants to maintain the US as a defense partner. And in the midst of that, you have the question of this new dynamic between India and China as well. So, how do you see all of this complex dynamics playing out? I think I'll stop at these 3 questions. I have a set of another 3 questions, and we'll take it up in the next round. I'll open it up to the speakers now, and probably Dr. Suwara can go first.
Thank you very much, Monish. I'm sorry, I'm addressing everybody by name. It's somehow in our EU delegation so natural to do that. I hope you don't mind that, but it's very natural. We just treat ourselves.
Not at all. I hope I can call you Ivan.
Please do. I'll be very, very happy. Thank you very much. I understand the question posed to me is about CBAM, but if I may, I will conclude with the answer to the CBAM. But if I can just refer a little bit to the 3 speakers that followed, because they were in a more comfortable situation than me, because they heard me speaking, so they could refer, and I couldn't hear them. So if I can make a couple of just comments on leading to CBAM, because I will end with CBAM, but I think it's important to actually make a reference to what has been said. And let me be here also a little bit academic, not just as a representative of the EU delegation to India and the European Union here. Before I say a little bit more, elaborate, what I would like everybody to remember from what I'm about to say is basically 4 words. First, diversification. Second, strategic autonomy. Third, challenges. And the 4th, very much linked with everything that is there, is interest. And now I will explain why I'm mentioning those 4 elements. What I have, and I won't be referring directly to any specific speaker. I will just say a few words on each that has been mentioned here. I think what is important, and as a starting point, is to notice that India and European Union face the challenges. Yes, they might be different challenges simply because we are placed in a different position, be it vis-a-vis other actors, or be it just simple as can be geographically positioned. We face also different challenges when it comes to the substance, but the nature of the challenges is not necessarily a different one. And here I use, for example, an issue of security. We all face some kind of security challenges. Now, as we face security challenges or other challenges, what we are aiming for is diversification. And to put it more broadly, I very much also enjoyed the quite a broad going through nearly entire world presentation by Laszlo. But indeed, that's what the presentation has shown. We are interlinked globally. So basically, when we have a diversification, what we need to do is we need to globally look for other partners. Now, we look for those partners simply because we might have different interests. As we look for other partners, we make sure that as we interact with those partners, our interests are preserved. Now, there has been an issue that we are trying to modify, we are trying to change India, we are trying to mold India as European Union is interacting with India. Absolutely not. We're not. We actually believe that India has a sovereign right to shape its own policies, its own well-being. It has its own interests. That's what is all strategic autonomy is all about. Moreover, I agree, European Union is a normative power. It is a normative power in the sense that as we look into strategic autonomy, we define that this is our right to define what is our interest and how we want to proceed. So, having said that, alluding to the diversification, let me just point out a little bit about the IMEC itself. Indeed, IMEC, I think we are at the very early stage of defining how IMEC will look like. It has been, the history of that has been mentioned and explained, so I'm not going to dwell about that. But what is important is to notice that as we diversify, as we look for the partners, as we see that there are challenges such as, be it energy, be it security, you know very well how IMEC is foreseen, how broad it's supposed to be. IMEC might offer responses to some of the challenges that we might have. And this is why the European Union indeed is interested in pursuing further cooperation when it comes to IMEC. Whether it will come to place, Laszlo has very properly explained what are the challenges related to that, be it security challenges through the territories where the issue, where the IMEC would supposed to be going through, or other challenges that are there. So IMEC, I put aside right now, but IMEC is also, aside of offering diversification, it also allows us to build our capacity as an economic pattern, which, aside of normative power, European Union also is. And here, what I would like to say is a few more words about FTA for everybody, because I have this impression, and it might be my wrong impression, that we seems to be in some kind of stalemate between the EU and the India. And, you know, there are doubts whether FTA will be signed off. Frankly speaking, what I have been trying to say at this, my preliminary address, is to basically say that both India and European Union are working hard to make sure that by the end of this year, we will sign off. Now, as we work hard, we need to remember that each of the partners in this negotiation, we have our interests. So what we need to find out is how to make this negotiation a win-win solution for both of our societies. And that's where currently we are standing with trade. In any negotiations, you can have moments, and the trade negotiations between India and European Union is a good example of that, with the stalemate in 2013 for 9 years until 2022. There is always this kind of moments of weakness, which require for the sides to think well, to reconsider their positions and see, you know, what is the most important element here. With the visit of President van der Leyen in February, it has become clear that signing of FTA it's a political priority. But aside of politics, there is also economics. Aside of economics, on the side of the European Union, what we need to remember is there are member states. So we need to have in place FTA, free trade agreement, which can be signed off by the member states of the European Union, because European Union is not just one voice, and that's something that everybody should understand. It's 20, this is a huge value added. It's 27 member states that are sitting at the table, represented by just one negotiation team. But at the end of the day, this negotiation team goes back and needs to have a clarity that this is what the member states have. So whatever will come, whenever it will come, I'm sure that it will be good for both of the partners at the table. And that leads me to one more issue which has been raised, and that answers to the question which you, Monish, has asked about CBAM. Now, I mentioned about strategic autonomy, I mentioned about the interests, and I mentioned about challenges, and the last one is the diversification. I put aside right now this diversification. I will focus on the strategic autonomy and the interest and the challenges. Yes, during the negotiations with on the free trade agreement, we have challenges. I don't know any negotiations which wouldn't be challenged, simply because both of our teams walk into the room and they come prepared. They know what is their essential interest and what is their the issues that are of importance. Now, we just concluded the 12th round of the negotiations. We are preparing for the 13th round, which will be at the beginning of September. So as I speak, the process is ongoing, and this is why in my preliminary address, I have mentioned that, you know, let's give it a chance. Let's see what will be the solution and what will come about. Definitely, there has been a significant advance on a number of the issues which have been considered as a stalemate in 2013 when the negotiations had been dropped. We already overcome some of the issues in this set of the 12 negotiations round. So we are working on improving the issues. I mentioned CBAM. On our side, India is considering that CBAM is an issue. Yes, it is, but it's in accordance with the World Trade Organization. Those are rules that we are not coming up. It's a regulation that is in accordance with the international organization. For us, as for the European Union, we perceive that issues such as the quality, what is it called? The quality QCO, quality control orders on the site, which are published by India. This is issue for the European to solve. So each of us represents a certain set of interests. And while for the European Union, it's very difficult, you know, if not impossible, to find an exemption for India, simply because what we are looking into is rules that are supported by the international organization. I think India is also in its position with the different set of interests and different priorities, that it also might be looking how can we come together into a so-called win-win situation. I used just this one example, but trust me, this is not just one example. I mean, you know, technical barriers to trade, that's the one. The rules of origin is another one. The sanitary measures as another challenge. I mean, we could focus on the challenges. I don't think it's a good idea to focus when you are negotiating. You should not be focusing on the challenges. You should be focusing, if your objective given by your political leaders is to come across, you need to focus on how out of those challenges you can actually make up an opportunity, and how can you come closer to actually leave the room with something in your hand. And I'll stop here for now, but there has been quite a lot of issues that I would love to measure, but being conscious of time, I cannot. But thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you so much. Aleksandra?
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. Yes, I totally agree with this, what was said by Ms. Suwara, and I agree that this really is really crucial. And yes, I also agree that every negotiation on FTA is challenging, yeah, and it's good to focus on this, what may come, the positive sides. And as I mentioned before, I don't think that signing this year or the next year will make such a big difference in this, how we see each other, what are the perspective. But as Monish, you asked what could be done, we all know that the roadmap 2025, we have 2025, so definitely the new document will be needed, yeah, to have some strategic priorities for the cooperation beyond 2025. I also believe that international relations is a lot about showing off a bit, I would say, or about storytelling. So I believe it will be a good thing if PM Modi will visit Brussels. If I'm not mistaken, last time he was there in 2016. If I'm mistaken, please correct me. So it will be a very good thing for him to go there. Then the new document for the strategic cooperation, I mean, for the next years could be announced. Yeah. And I think I may just stop here because I will be also very happy to listen to this, what Laszlo has to say. Thank you so much.
Yeah, everyone wants to listen to Laszlo.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and many thanks for the very hard question. I think it's not easy to answer at the moment, but definitely what I think is an opportunity is the EU-India security and defense partnership as part of the larger negotiations. And here we see a lot of opportunities in that process, especially the program Rearming Europe, which is going to mobilize around 800 billion euro in the upcoming years, and especially the joint white paper on European defense offers kind of opportunities for EU-India relations. Despite the fact that you're right that India-Russia's relation and defense partnership is highly problematic from the European Union, and not only European Union, but NATO perspective as well. But on the other hand, there is an internal issue here as well. European Union has to redefine its relation to NATO as this process is going on. So it's not just about EU-India, but about EU and NATO and the transatlantic relations. So, but definitely on the state level, member state level, what you can see this year or the last year is a huge increase of defense partnership, which is not new, I think. There is a continuation of that. France is a very important player in India's defense, so Italy, Sweden as well, Germany as well. So I think nothing new in that, but given the fact that there is a rearming Europe, that definitely it's an opportunity for India to enter in the defense market of the European Union. And of course, I saw the other question here in the chat on EU-Russia and EU-Iran and India-Russia, India-Iran relations. I think regarding that question, it depends on largely the end or the settlement of the Ukraine issue, which is still an ongoing issue, and we cannot predict the end of the war. It largely depends on security guarantees, and definitely somehow at some point EU should re-engage with Russia, or at least to define the security mechanism from a regional perspective. Iran is more problematic in my opinion, but again, it largely depends on there will be at the end of the year in October a UN voting on Iran's nuclear program, because we are on the 10th year of the so-called nuclear deal, which was one of the success story of the European Union as well 10 years ago. And the question is whether to reimpose sanctions on Iran, the UN sanctions. I'm not speaking about other different sanctions. And here, Iran's cooperation, I think, is crucial. at this very moment, I think I've been to Iran just before the war, attending a Tehran dialogue forums. It was very interesting experience. And what we can see here is internal transformation of the political affairs, and very recently the appointment of Ali Larijani in Iran as head of the National Security Council. I think it shows Iran a kind of willingness to renegotiate the nuclear deal, and especially to reduce the uranium enrichment, which can be satisfying for European countries as well, because I think this is the major problem at the moment on the table. And if Iran is behavior changing in that, then it can, I think, pave the way not to reimpose the sanctions and not to overcome the nuclear deal. But definitely a lot of other things should do in those relations, but we should see the next developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you for not only answering my question, but picking up questions from the chat box and answering them. I think, there are a lot of questions that are in my mind on Indo-Pacific and on Paris AI Summit and the Munich Security Conference, but that's got to be for the next, I think, webinar. We are short of time, and that will be a great opportunity for EWA to come to the CRF office. Right. So, but before I end, I will be amiss not to ask a question to the one who was giving the Indian perspective. So I'll end with a question to Indrani that, if you had to see from New Delhi, and not from New Delhi as in the government, but from someone who looks at international relations, what do you think would be the most priority issue for India and the EU to deal with right now, if we had to address some concerns?
Thank you, Monish. Really interesting question. So from my perspective, I really feel that media is one area where, both sides should work a little bit more. And why I am talking, because from my own analysis, which I was following specifically after the Ukraine war, the media coverage which was happening in Indian side was more from the Russian perspective and less from the European perspective. And I believe you understand what I'm talking from where I'm coming from. So I really feel that, the media from both the sides needs to do a little bit more work so that the common people of India, not only the strategic community or the government, but people to people contact. See, in India, what is happening is Europe is looked from the perspective of tourism only. Not beyond that. I'm talking about the common people's perspective. So that needs to change. And as I said that during the Ukraine war, the media, projection which was happening at our end was a little bit different. So I think both sides need to work a little bit more on this, and more transparent dialogue should be maybe track 1.5 or track 2 dialogues, or government to government should be there regarding the whole Russia-Ukraine war. I'm sure there are dialogues going on between India and EU, but a little bit more needs to be done. And somewhere I'm pointing towards the secondary sanctions and all. So that's challenging. And I really feel that if these issues are addressed more transparently, then there will be a little bit more trust from both the sides, and all the issues which we face, maybe in the FTA and all the other things, including human rights, is another area where India and EU needs to really have a transparent dialogue to understand each other's view. Because somewhere I have always felt that India has it that, okay, EU doesn't understand how do we see the human rights issues, and EU, the way they see on the human rights issues, maybe we do not understand it. So there are many gaps between understanding between both sides. And I really feel that this is one area where, including with media, that can be, looked into, which will help in addressing all the issues and also bridging the gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Indrani, for your response. And yeah, all good things come to an end. I think it gives us more food for thought for the next round of discussions. And as I said, I think it will be a pleasure for CRF to welcome Eva to our office and have a more fruitful discussion in person. Having said that, I think heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Dr. Eva Suwara for taking out your time and really engaging not only through your initial remarks, but through your very, I think, transparent responses to all the questions that came forward. And I'm very sure that if we had more time, you would have been more than happy to engage in more discussion. And we'll make sure that we look forward to that. Thank you so much. I have to thank again my friend Dr. Aleksandra Jaskólska for not only making her own presentation, for also helping us in getting speakers and working on this with us together. Thank you, Ola. And Dr. Laszlo Csicsmann, we intend to hear more from you in the future, and perhaps with Corvinus University as well as with the Hungarian Institute of International Affairs. We really look forward to having joint events together in the future. Last but not the least, my co-coordinator, Dr. Indrani Talukdar, who also made a presentation today, but she has been working, both of us have been working on this from the very day one to make this happen. Many thanks to you. To the CRF team who work behind the scenes, handling the logistics, handling the technical part of how we arrange. Without them, this will not be a success. So my thanks to all of them. And last but not the least, to the president of CRF, Mr. Shiv Priyadarshi, who is the support and guidance behind all the initiatives that we take forward. And also to Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, who was kind enough to deliver the opening remarks that really set the tone of this discussion. And all the participants, I know that time was the villain in this case. Otherwise, we could have answered more questions. But we'll be sure to come back with more interesting webinars and discussions through Chintan Research Foundation. And thank you very much for such a fruitful discussion. And we hope to come back again. So thank you very much. Namaste. And we hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Eva, we have to see you soon in the office.
With big pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.